Hyde, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Anne.
Why did you enter politics?
Bit serendipity, actually. I wasn't interested in politics. I was always interested in policy, initially environmental policy and then economic policy. And I was a great fan of Roger Douglas for both reasons, because he was a great environmentalist too, which people don't realise. But when I shifted to Auckland, I met Roger Douglas, and I went up to thank him. And he said I was writing a book, and I ended up helping him. And then out of that grew ACT. And he asked me to help, and I started helping. And they said, would you stand? And I was very reluctant. And then I did. It was a funny feeling. I walked into Parliament, and I've had a lot of different jobs. And I walked into Parliament, and I just had this overwhelming sense that this is where I'm meant to be.
You have had a lot of jobs, haven't you?
Mm.
University and North Sea oil rigs.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you've worked with the New Zealand businessman Alan Gibbs.
Yes.
How have all those experiences shaped you, do you think?
In a way, they fitted me into politics, because I worked in construction work and truck driving, so I know about working for a living. And being an academic was great, because it taught me about science and economics, which is a fabulous background for Parliament. And then working with Alan Gibbs was fabulous at so many levels, but it allowed me to understand business, and particularly big business, and how it works. And I have a much greater appreciation of that, because I think it's a mystery to most New Zealanders. And of course Alan is the most remarkable man I've ever met.
And of course your childhood had quite an impact on you. Can you share a little bit of that, growing up in North Canterbury with your father and your mother?
I had a fabulous childhood. My father was a truck driver. We lived in Rangiora, North Canterbury. He worked for North Canterbury Transport. My mother was, I don't know how you say that these days, but stayed at home and looked after myself and my two older sisters. I was very close to my mum. And then from the time I can remember, it was so great, because my dad was able to take me in the truck. And I just had a fabulous time growing up in a truck, and we'd crisscross North Canterbury, and we'd go to quarries and coal mines and farms. But also my father just had those great values that we had in the 60s, which was, you worked hard and you looked after your family. And I saw what you did to earn a dollar. And of course I grew very close to my dad as a consequence, always close to my mum because she was my mother. But to see your dad working is a wonderful thing, and my dad's not a very emotional man or expressive like we were in those days. But to see him work was wonderful, and he taught me the value and respect of hard work. I've never had a bad job.
Did your father drive you hard?
Yes.
What
Very,
were
very
his
hard.
expectations?
He never said. My father didn't sort of say, do this or do that, or this is what I expect. But it was just left unsaid. And funnily enough, it wasn't until I was sort of in my 40s and in Parliament that I realised that he was proud of me, because I always felt short, because no one could outwork my father. No one sort of could do the job quicker or as well as him. And I always felt sort of inadequate. When I went to university and became a university lecturer, I actually felt deficient around my father, because, I couldn't weld things and fix things and do that manly thing. But when I went to Parliament, he said that he'd been rung by one of his old foremen, and they said, I see they're beating up on young Rodney. And my father said, yeah, and he said, well, he's not going to buckle, because he's a Hyde. And that made me proud, because I realised my father was proud of me. And of course he always was proud of me, but I just always wanted to impress my dad. I think it's a big thing we carry, but it's a good thing. He didn't drive me hard in the sense of do this and do that. It was just you'd work with him, and I'd need to keep up and do a day's work.
And he was offered promotion at one stage, wasn't he, as a foreman?
Yeah.
Truck driver to foreman, but he
Yeah.
turned it down.
Yes.
What impact did that have on you?
Changed my life. It was clearly a question he'd always been asked. My father said no and hopped out. And I said, Dad, why wouldn't you be a foreman? And he said, oh, well, you'd have to take responsibility for other guys, and some of them are lazy and useless. And also, I'm a good truck driver, and it mightn't work as a foreman. And I couldn't believe it. And I thought, what would I do if I was asked? And I resolved then and there that if any option came along like that, I'd say yes, because I thought you'd never get to do anything else. And I think it's a generational thing, that my father's generation sort of came through the Depression and the war, and they just valued stability and security and everything the same. Whereas we were the post-war sort of 50s, 60s generation, and we wanted adventure. And sort of every adventure that I've had, my father said, oh, I'm not sure you're doing the right thing, you know, I'm going overseas, oh, I'm not sure about that. Going to university, oh, I'm not sure about that. But it made me always think, when something came along that I thought, oh, I might fail at this, this scares me, I'd just say yes, because I'd remember back to that day. Isn't it funny? I only realised that when I wrote the book.
Taking up challenges, isn't it, and fear of fate. Tell us about Dancing with the Stars, because in the book, you say that it was terrifying and it was almost like facing a firing squad.
Yes.
You know, that odd sense of calm before you know you're going to die. Was it really that frightening?
Yes, for me. I think for most men, dancing's tough. You know, we're very self-conscious and scared of making a fool of ourselves. I'd never danced. Dancing for me was up there with the irrational fear that someone has, like of spiders or flying or public speaking. That's how I felt about the dancing. And to turn up there on that first night and go dancing on TV live, I did. I just went into a very quiet place because I thought my life is over. You know, I'm just going to go out there and it's like... But, you know, it's the greatest thing also because I found that I could do something I never thought I could. It is the most impossible thing. It's like flying to the moon. The idea that I could put a funny outfit on and do the cha-cha live on TV is just so out there that I did it. And I thought, wow, I can do things. But more particularly, it taught me about other people because Kiwis were just loving the show and they're saying, good on you, Rodney, go for it. We love, you know, it's fantastic. And I thought, isn't this wonderful? Because we do get behind people that give things a go. And it's how you react when you fail. I didn't get up and blame the judges or blame anything. I said, oh no, well, I'm going to give it another go next week. We loved that. And I didn't realise that. And I realised all that through the show. And it changed me as a person and it changed me politically. You know, it just gave me such a lot of confidence. A, that I danced, and B, that Kiwis actually support a person that's prepared to stand up and say, this is what I am.
How important is confidence to you?
Huge, because it's something I lack. Because the reason that I was very reluctant to be in Parliament was I thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to take the criticism. And when it first started, I found it very, very hard. And in part, it was like turning up to a school where they bully you. And sadly, I learnt to be a bully back. And I got very good at it because I studied it to overcome it. And funnily enough, dancing's given me such a lot of confidence. Now Winston's having a whack at me, I just laugh, which is a growth in confidence in myself. It's been quite wonderful.
We're just weeks away possibly from the election. What's your vision for New Zealand?
Well, it's to be free and prosperous. I'm a capitalist in the sense that I believe in limited government. I believe that government's job is to protect us from the thugs and bullies and uphold our basic rights. It's not to tell us how we can educate our kids, bring up our kids, what we can have in our lunch, how we can run our business or how we can manage our own private property. So I have a view of limited government. So that means a free and prosperous New Zealand. We've set the goal and act of beating Australia by 2020, not in the rugby or the netball, but we'll do that as well, but actually financially, economically, socially, politically. And what that does is lift your goals, lift your sights to, well, where are we going to be in 10 years? Because something I've learned is it's very easy to let yourself slip. And so what you need to do to get out of it is to lift to where you want to be and then go back to your principles and values. And so we've developed a 20-point plan that would achieve that. Of course, we're a little wee party. I've got Epsom, we've got a couple of MPs. The great news is I've got Roger Douglas on board, who's just a fabulous visionary and got guts. And our aim is to say, look, every party vote counts because I'm going to keep Epsom. I've worked so hard there. And with that party vote, we can influence, get the ideas around the table and change the direction of New Zealand with National's help. John Key is saying, oh, he wants to be Prime Minister, but stay with Helen Clark's policies. Well, we're going to help him be Prime Minister, and he's going to help us with the National Party change the direction of New Zealand, because I don't agree with Helen Clark's policies. I don't agree with. I think it's sapping our fibre, our ingenuity, our responsibility, everything. We need to change New Zealand, and that's what we're about. That's my vision.
Mr. Hyde, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.